We are connecting right now to YouTube. And we're going to call this video, oh, I just bumped my whole situation, live chat with Andrew Astral. Such a cool name choice. Love it. Okay.
Because I started going astral about 3 years ago.
Oh, okay. Yeah, we'll definitely want to talk about that. All right, and we are streaming live on YouTube. How's it going, everybody? This is Jax Atlantis, and today here I've got Andrew Astral. Andrew, would you like to introduce yourself? Talk a little bit about what you do.
Absolutely, Jax. So first of all, thank you so much for having me on the show.
Yeah.
My name is Andrew Astral. I guess my big thing is I'm an energy healer. And so about 3 years ago, I had this crazy paranormal experience. I had an encounter with an archangel. And since then, for the past 3 years or so, I've just been like digging deep and researching and just, every single day, every single night, just getting my hands on audiobooks, finding resources on YouTube or Facebook, finding people and connecting with people like Jax. And so that's been my path for the past 3 years. Yeah.
That's beautiful. Yeah. So if you don't mind me asking, what originally sparked your interest in the spiritual realm?
So I was always kind of curious. I had stumbled, I'd say about 5 years ago, I had stumbled upon some YouTube videos, some like Abraham Hicks, some like Teal Swan stuff, some Dolores Cannon, if you're familiar. And so, I had some of these things, here and there that they were in my mind. I think the big trigger point for me was when my mother actually went to a Reiki master. And so it was this Reiki master healer person. And at that point, I was kind of an atheist, or, this was about three years ago. And I was like, okay, no way any of that energy healing is real, right?
Right.
And so she goes to this master healer. And while she's at this master healer, she says, oh, your grandmother's here. And of course, my mother's grandmother was dead at that point. And so there's no way like she could have come through. But she gave like very specific, like evidential things that only like my mom and her grandmother had that connection with. And so like initially I was angry at my mom. I was like, Mom, that person is trying to scam you. There's no way that's real. That's really stupid. You shouldn't go there anymore. But my mom was very convinced that, this was real, this was accurate, this was an actual thing that was happening. And so that's when it started to shift in my mind a little bit. And I started to investigate further on my own. And, of course, I found out it's all true. And like, not only that, it's like there's so much more that I thought was all hocus pocus, that I thought was all fake, and people trying to scam and make money. But I figured out it's real, and it's crazy. And so that was a big shift about 3 years ago. And that's what started the whole deal.
Damn. So that's what started the whole deal. So for you work in definitely a much different background normally. You want to talk a little bit about what you do outside of spirituality, and if to you any ways that these things connect? Sure.
So outside of spirituality, I guess you could call me a web developer. So I code, I build websites, I work in technology. So yeah, that's what I do. And so I've heard things of you're writing love into the code, or writing these spiritual things into your software programs. Right. And it's like I can get that to a degree, but I think the biggest impact I have there, and I think for anyone who is spiritual and has a career, everything's spiritual, right? But like a not spiritual career.
Yeah.
What energy do you bring into that work environment? And so, there are days where I've been like, all right, Council of Light, come with me to work today. And then, guess what? Meetings are more structured and we get things done quicker. And, there's a more seriousness to what we do.
Does it ever work the other way around? Does it ever work where you're doing energy work on someone and you apply a philosophy that you would use in web development to their energy?
So the philosophy of web development is the philosophy of computer science, which is the scientific method.
Right.
And so absolutely, my energy practice and my healing practice is really scientific method based. And that's how I've been approaching it for the past years. I didn't start doing any of this until I had hard evidence that it was real, and I had like firsthand experience. So I didn't start on my journey really until I had that firsthand experience. Yes, I can confirm this is real. This is real stuff, and I'm moving forward with that and what works. And so I always go back to when the government was doing their remote viewing program. So the guy who was in charge of that,
Russell Targ.
Yeah, I think it was him, or it was somebody. I just remember them saying, we're not concerned about why it works. We're just concerned about finding a repeatable repeatable set of steps that we can follow to get results. We're not we're not even going to try to understand why this works, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's Russell Targ is really, in fact, the catalyst that sort of sprang me into all this. In a lot of ways, I've been, interested in spirituality my whole life. But as far as it was June 17th, 2017, where I really dug into remote viewing and Russell Targ and his book, The Reality of ESP, and what is it, The Awakened Mind, it's not The Beautiful Mind, it's The Limitless Mind. I think it's Limitless Mind, but he has another book. You'll be able to find it pretty easily. I think it's one of his newer ones. But it was incredible. It was so incredible because there was something that I could take from the point of view of the scientific method, something that's repeatable, and I taught a few classes on remote viewing, and I actually just did a mentorship the other day where I was teaching someone remote viewing, and she was a natural. She just nailed it. They were not easy shapes to nail. One of them was an ammonite fossil. And so, basically the spiraling shell, that's not a common shape that we're going to see with the little markings, and she nailed it. And this other one was a very bizarre shaped piece of green opal, very oblong, like very, sudden, sharp bottom. And she just nailed the shapes. She even nailed some of the colors, and she just was a natural remote viewing. So it's a miracle, and it's a miracle that coexists with the scientific method. I think that there's a lot of cases in which parapsychology, they're so hungry for that validation that they sometimes will put out a study that actually is not backed by science, or that they sort of fudge the science a little bit. And that's not helpful to us. It's better to take time to prove some of these things the right way. And, even if it takes years or decades, than it is to rush out something about certain EMF frequencies that the scientific community is going to look at and say, you guys, like, what are you talking about? Like, there's people who try and measure chi based on infrared light, even though there's no baseline that's already been established that chi would be seen that way. There's no of what it would look like at all, or how it would be measured. So we have forms of measurement that have come out and have had hundreds of millions of dollars spent on them that might not even be pointing at the right thing. And so I think there's absolutely, Age of Aquarius energy that's coming on. We're reaching this science and spirituality, reaching their synthesis point, and it's going to be super cool. I think that you're going to be jazzed about that. I know I am. So yeah, it's pretty wild.
Yeah, and what I'm saying is, so we have modern medicine. And so about 30 years from now, I think modern medicine is really going to start catching on to some of this energy stuff. And, we're going to see them, doctors talk more about the chakras and the meridians and the energy systems of the human body. And I think it's going to become more accepted over time. Because, we have the tools and, ability to record before and after. Like, if I, break my finger, they take an x-ray and they say, okay, it's going to take 6 weeks to heal, do a bunch of Reiki, do a bunch of energy stuff. It's healed in 2 weeks, take another x-ray. We start accumulating these case studies, and there are already so many. If you look for them, it's just if any of these doctors, start coming forward with some of this, their medical license is on the line and things like that.
Right.
So they're risking their reputation a little bit. This is because it has had that hocus pocus
Yeah, of course.
stuff in the past.
Yeah, a couple cool places. One, so there's this guy Charlie Goldsmith. You may have heard of him. He had a show on TLC for a while called The Healer. And essentially, I mean, this guy would walk around. The episode would go something like this: guy would walk around. He'd go to a hospital. He'd meet up with a doctor. The doctor and then would team up. The doctor would merely measure and do his normal thing, and Charlie was supposed to help with energy healing. And so his method, he would literally just sit there, close his eyes, focus on the person, and with energy begin to repair stuff. So no movements, no talking, no hypnosis elements, nothing like that. And there were people who like hadn't been able to straighten out their leg in like multiple years that, stood up. And there were people who had severe sprains and different issues that were able to miraculously be better. It's pretty clear that energy healing works. Another group is evolvinghumans.com. They did this really incredible analysis where someone had a shoulder injury. I don't remember, I think she was a ballerina, but she had a shoulder injury, and they had her on a thermal scanner. And so basically you can see where it's inflamed, where it's hot. They, of course, temperature controlled the room so that it's even. There was no extra heat, nothing else. And this guy just basically, it's a time-lapse video of him just doing energy work, and you just watch the thermal scanner, and all that red area, all that inflammation suddenly starts to go down and starts to turn green. And it's essentially just a matter of more measurement, and then being able to tie those measurements to what values we really are, able to even measure here. For instance, we might be centuries away from measuring what the heck healing energy is, like the way it's comprised, the plane in which it exists, or the materials that it's made out of, if any. And but at the same time, we can measure its effects much sooner. We can measure that now. Basically, we can just measure how people do. And yeah, there's in a lot of hospitals, there's Reiki and other types of energy healing that are being done, that's being included in. So it's pretty clear that more than a popularized idea, it's something that's being accepted in very sort of slowly, and it's kind of with hesitance, but with good hesitance, honestly. I mean, with faith healers, those people that are like, I'll heal you with the power of God, and you just have to call this toll-free number and donate as much money as you can. The bigger you donate, the more blessings you get from God. So like with that, I get why people are skeptical. You should be. If you have, if you're thinking about it, of course, that's something to be skeptical about. But energy healing rather than faith healing, energy healing is, to me, it's a natural component of the human existence, of the human condition. I think that it's something that was probably much more prevalent back in ancient times, before we started attaching all the dogmas around it and getting lost in the hows and whys instead of the just doing things. And just imagine the fatality rate back then. Like, you would really need some energy healing all the time. It'd be brutal. When things were going well, that would be brutal to live back in that age, in the ancient past. That must have been pretty crazy. But what for you? So energy healing is a big part of this. Intuitive messages that you get from the energy healing. What would you say is your mission statement or your thesis statement on spirituality and the change that you're trying to impact?
So I love that question. So my thesis statement would be that I want people to believe in magic, in the magic of themselves, in knowing themselves as love. And I'd say that would be my mission statement.
Damn. Well, that's a great statement. Mine's pretty similar, but now I've got better wording that I can use. No, just sorry. But it's that's really cool though. And so you want people to find that within themselves. I say all the time, psychic gifts, rather than thinking about it as a tool or a skill or something like that, just think about it. It's just an extra level of awareness that I believe all human beings have access to. Of course, through the different filters we have, the different things that we're really competent at naturally versus the things that take us forever, that's going to look different from person to person in the way it manifests. But we all have that. We all have that in our journey. And so to me, we don't need to be, you know, quote unquote, spiritual or a religious person or have a particular belief system. That we actually, just by getting to know ourselves, are getting to know our abilities. And befriending our intuition is the way that we master those abilities, you know?
Totally. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. With the intuition component. So, you know, I was, you know, I brought up earlier on my Facebook, I was getting all these downloads, right? And some of those were talking about how, you know, basically like the point of it all is like, you know, why we're here incarnated on Earth, and healing is just such a huge part of that. And healing just goes so deep into everything we do. You know, starting out with the tiniest little sore spots in our psyche, like in our mind, in our thoughts. You know, as soon as someone tells us we're not, or we make up our minds on our own that we're not worthy or something, and then that manifests eventually into physical, I find that fascinating, and I find that exciting. And so, you know, really the past years, that's really where I started. So like the psychological components of life, and, you know, how we store trauma and like store it in our bodies and in our central nervous system, and then how that eventually manifests in disease. And so it follows this long path through, you know, it follows a mental path, you know, starting with the mind, and then eventually winds up in the physical body. And so that's huge, and that's you know, that's a huge part, I feel, of, you know, why we are here on Earth, to help identify those parts of ourselves which are tender or sore or hurt, or where we don't feel like we are worthy or lovable or any of those things. And then for us to be able to see that, you know, if we can't see it mentally, if we can't, you know, see it, you know, spiritually or emotionally, then it becomes physical and it becomes clear. Mm. And so from that perspective, it's, I think that's a huge component, and just having that understanding and knowledge, I think, can help so many people to be able to see where a lot of these things come from.
Yeah, no, being able to see where it comes from is like, you know, I think it is really important. I think a lot of times we look just immediately for solutions to what it is we're processing right now, instead of looking at like why we're processing it in the first place. For you, so as far as, you know, helping people with this and helping yourself with this in your journey, do you teach classes? Do you perform just like one-on-one sessions? Like, how does that normally manifest for you?
Yeah, if people want to learn and they're interested, absolutely. And I love to teach. I also teach web development courses, but that's unrelated. Yeah. But yeah, and what I tell people, if I do a healing on someone, and you know, I know, I actually want your opinion on some of this, Jax. But so, you know, I do a healing on someone, and I tell them, if you do not like address this underlying issue that is causing this to happen to you, it's going to come back. You know, yeah. if I heal you now,
fucking yes, like 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, to me, like, I get that all the time, whether it's the, you know, metaphorically cutting cords, or whether it's doing the healing or whatever. Eventually, if the mindset around it isn't healed, the problem has to come back. You know, yeah. Like, if, for instance, if you have a corrupted file, and all I do is I keep deleting the corrupted file itself, instead of going in to figure out why the file that's put in that folder gets corrupted. If I don't fix that, then there will always be a corrupted file there. It will just repeatedly come back. It doesn't matter, I delete the one that's in the folder on top. Like, you know, I have to eventually like go back and be like, okay, what's causing this error? It's like, oh, okay, anytime I try and export this, I'm using too old of a software, and so it doesn't handle it, and, you know, so it's corrupted, or so it's, you know, has an issue with opening. So, like, yeah, I think that that's a huge part of it. What would you say is the most common mindset, attachment, or whatever that is connected to their mindset that is troublesome, or that is pretty common with most of the healings you do?
So I guess I'll give an example that's pretty easy to understand. So some of these really take a lot of deep diving into, the psyche, and you just have to be like very open and very honest with yourself. So it takes a lot of ego layers being broken down to get to that point, right? But I'll give a good example of some things that I see. So for example, I was doing a healing on a woman, and so she had so basically pain in her heart area, but it was like the back of her heart. So it's almost like in her back, but where her heart is. And so, and she had come to me and she said, nobody's been able to figure this out or, diagnose me or anything. I can't understand why this is here. And so I scanned her, and so I got the message, stabbed in the back. And so the information that came through was, there was someone very close to her who basically, betrayed her, and that left a deep wound in her heart, and like the energy around her heart chakra was being affected by that. And so, that's an example. So if you're still holding that wound in your body and that betrayal, and you haven't made peace with that, you haven't forgiven that, then so it starts mentally and emotionally. You have that knot, you have that tinder spot, and I like to think of emotional wounds very similar to physical wounds, or physical sore spots. So if you have a myofascial trigger point, or like a knot in your muscles, right? So it's a sore tinder spot, and if you touch it, if you get close to it, then you're like, stay away, Yeah. And it hurts, and it can refer pain to other places. And so emotionally, if someone gets close to that area, it triggers them. They get triggered, right? But you have to go there. You have to massage it. You have to give it love. You have to make peace with it and make it become comfortable. And then so it'll start to loosen, and it'll flatten out, and it'll become more normal, right?
Right.
And so that's an example that how a psychological wound manifests in physical pain. And it sounds weird and metaphoric, but that's like literally where in the energetic body they're storing that tension, that point of tension.
We can that point of tension, and we can feel that in the most basic of emotions. Like we feel the way our blood changes, the way our heartbeat changes when we're angry. We feel when we're heartbroken, it literally hurts our heart. Like it literally, hurts us. There's been actual documented medical cases of people dying essentially of a broken heart. Having like literal physical issues that happen with their valves. And it's like, it's pretty clear our emotions affect us so deeply. And so I think it's just a matter of maybe a little bit more time and a little bit more research before we kind of lock on to what it is you're pointing at, which is that, our emotions have the ability to really not only harm ourselves in some sort of immediate sense of, being uncomfortable, but in some sort of long-term sense with the creation of actual diseases or medical issues.
Yeah. And I think that's a lot of what chronic illness is. So for me, so in November, I started having these crazy medical issues, and I'm so much better now than I was in November, right? But so in November, I had this just crippling, debilitating disease that seemed to come out of nowhere, and I was just horribly depressed and crying, and I couldn't even like sit down and enjoy playing video games anymore.
Yeah.
I was super messed up in November. But yeah, so basically what had manifested for that, so it was the muscles in my pelvic floor were just like constantly tense and tightened because I was always so stressed out. And so if you go back a layer, well, why am I always stressed out? Well, it's because I don't feel like I'm enough, or I don't feel like I'm doing enough. And I think that is a huge one for a lot of people, they put a huge amount of pressure on themselves, and they stress themselves out. It's not their fault. I would say that they're stressing themselves out, but they don't know that. But that can show up in the body. But what's behind that, the reason why we're releasing all that cortisol, and why we're tensing all these different areas in our bodies, it's the underlying belief of, well, I have to work hard, I have to do better, I have to do more, and I have to basically push myself beyond what is comfortable for myself and for my body.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think pushing yourself beyond what you're comfortable is like, it's the most physical and metaphysical journey ever, specifically seeking out the things that are making you uncomfortable, or the things that you think are the cause of being uncomfortable, and going for it and doing something about it. Even if it's just a fear of spiders that doesn't really seem like it's connected to much in life. You could get by in life with the fear of spiders, and it's not too much of a problem. But eventually the day is going to come where you realize there's tons of little moments in which you encounter a spider, and that spider might be jumping into relationships. That spider might be refusing to get in a good relationship because you're so preoccupied with bad ones. That spider can be a lot of different things, but one day at a time, like be in the same room as the spider, approach the spider from 10 feet away, from 5 feet, and then slowly, just give yourself time, be gentle with yourself, but push it, like go for it. Because what if you have nothing to lose by doing that. You already know it's an irrational fear, 9 times out of 10. It's an irrational fear in the sense that it either isn't actually dangerous, or it's something that's only dangerous if you kind of put yourself in this position to make it dangerous. When in reality, the relationship really isn't a danger to you. That spider is not really actually going to bite you and poison you. So yeah, no, I think that's absolutely brilliant. So if people, are trying to find you, if people go to Andrew Astral on Facebook, for example, or they go to your group, Spirit Squad, I believe it was. So if they're finding you there, what are they normally going to be seeing? Are they going to be seeing like live videos from you, or are you going to be teaching pretty often, or mostly like setting up classes?
So what I have been doing is, so you guys are going to start to see more and more. So apparently this is the year where I'm shifting from, full-time IT to full-time energy healing, essentially.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So this is the year for me. So it's sparse now. I'm just getting everything set up, but I have been trying to at least every weekend go live, do some healings. If people want to do private sessions with me, absolutely can book those. I encourage people to actually friend me, so that I have my own separate Facebook profile, but I have the Andrew Astral Facebook profile.
Oh, okay.
Add me as a friend. And just message me on there, like that. That's why I made the profile. It's to connect with people, for this reason, for this healing journey, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, you can connect there. My Facebook group is Spirit Squad, and so hopefully going to do some cool stuff. Would love to do more interviews with people too, and maybe get people on there. I love what you're doing with this, Jax, by the way.
Thank you. Yeah, I would love to be on your channel one of these days. Yeah.
Totally. Yeah, like I want to tell everyone the story of like how I started working with you a little bit.
Go for it. Yes, of course.
Yeah, and like flatter Jax a little bit.
Oh.
Yeah, I'm trying to think if there's anything else pressing too. It's like I've got a YouTube channel. I've got like 4 subscribers. What?
We'll do 100 of these videos. You don't have to get it all out today. We'll tackle some subjects, and then next time we'll tackle some more.
Yeah, but just know, everybody, like more and more is coming from me. But if you resonate and you want to talk about any of this, or see me do some live healings or anything, absolutely add me as a friend. Join Spirit Squad, like the Andrew Astral Facebook page. Boom, thank you. So yeah, I want to say some stuff about Jax and how awesome he is, by the way, because when I was earlier, I think we've known each other for over a year now, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's
Yeah.
been a year, possibly a year and a half. It's
Yeah.
been a minute. It would have been for sure 2018, but it would have been relatively early 2018. A summer. No, yeah, you're right. You're right. So, yeah, summer of 2018 would be when we first started working together.
Yeah. And so I actually learned basically channeling, and so talking to dead people, right, from Jax, because I was aware that I was able to do it. I had been able to do it, and experimented with that and had success, but I hadn't been able to do that. Well, I hadn't had any like real formal training. It's like, should I be like protecting myself, or like, how should I do this in like a, in a professional setting? And so someone had actually like hired me to do a mediumship reading for me, like in a couple of days. And I was like, Jax, can you teach me how to do this? He's like, sure, man.
Yeah,
and
man.
I think it was like the very next day. It's like super, super late notice. He got on and he basically taught me how to do it. And, I was able to channel Jax's grandfather. And I brought forth some information that I thought was complete nonsense. I was seeing a Christmas tree over here, and then a dreidel over there, and then a boat in the backyard, and then I was seeing all this stuff. And Jax like jumping out and scaring people. But it was super cool. And
you were really fast at it. Essentially, I told him the general idea, and I was like, go, because essentially all of my teaching methods, like spoiler alert, they almost all come from the position of, let's jump into the deepest end possible and just like go for this part of it, and then like we'll describe all the details and stuff later. Let's just go in the deep end dangerously. And so he just did it, went for it. And you're a lot like me. You're someone who processes a lot of this stuff through the cerebral energies. And I've seen your energy change over the last, year and a half, as a person, the way you carry yourself, the way you speak. You've changed quite a bit in a really positive way. But when we were talking at this time, you were moving from a very cerebral place, but you allowed yourself to kind of like let your guard down for a second and just like kind of operate through the feelings. And it was cool. You just channeled my grandpa. Like you just started naming thing after thing. And it was so funny because the time period you did it, you had mentioned something from, what was it? I think when he was like 25, you had mentioned something. And then everything else was about from the point I knew him. Like all the things you mentioned, all the little moments, the feelings, and even the general energy of him, like his expression. Most people don't pick up or even would know he was a serious character when he was alive. He had this very gravelly voice, but at the same time, it was very soft and very like very nice. It always felt very welcoming. You always felt like you could talk to him. And he definitely had a temper, but he was someone that, in all the time I knew him, was just always either cracking jokes or kind of quiet and serious and thinking about something. And so you nailed it. You just hit up on his energy. And ever since then, it sounds like you've been feeling like you just kind of have that connection open. You can just channel whenever.
It still surprises me though.
Yeah.
Because I was doing a evidential mediumship reading for someone recently. And like, I do it, I say all this stuff, and I describe all these things, and then at the end, I'm like, does any of that make sense? And then I open my eyes, and they're like crying in front of me, because they're like, yes, everything that you said. Like while I'm doing it, it's like, this is just coming into my mind. I don't know if it's right or wrong. I'm just saying it. And so like that, like seeing that. First of all, seeing other people do that, and then realizing that I could do it from not having any faith or idea that I could at all was hugely transformational. And like, you know, if people are brave enough, like I want everybody to try that and see that they have that power. There's just so much that channeling has opened up for me, and just so much that I've learned, you know, especially from other people channeling, like on YouTube and Facebook and whatnot, and all the wisdom they can bring in from the other side. Like, that's super cool to me. That's what's exciting to me.
That's so awesome. Yeah, you know, I as far as the journey of that, as far as, you know, intuition, I think would be one thing to look at, whether it's channeling, intuition, predicting the future, anything. For anyone out there that is ever having problems with feeling confident in what you're getting, or you're feeling like you're questioning your accuracy all the time, one thing, and I would love to hear your opinion on this, to keep in mind is that when intuition presents a feeling, it presents a fragment of a thought, when it presents a part of an image, there's this leap of faith that you have to take as the person to express something, not knowing if it's going to be accurate or not. Because if what you try and do instead is to try and control the situation with your conscious mind and say, well, it's this, so it's probably like this, so, you know, it's like a blue car, instead of, you just saw the color blue. You made this whole thing about a blue car, and then there was nothing about a blue car in that person's life. The color blue, though, had you have stuck with it, would have signified something else, like the, you know, the blue bird or whatever that, you know, their grandmother had on their windowsill, like a statue of a bluebird or something. It happens all the time. Intuition repeatedly gives us a fragment of something, and we can then befriend our intuition and respect it by expressing what it is we picked up from our intuition, or we can kind of disrespect our intuition and say that's not enough, and so we try and control it or make what's like the most likely thing. The longer you do that, the longer you will question your intuition. The ironic thing is, none of us as human beings are ever infallible. We're not infallible. At the same time, though, intuition is always going to point you in the right direction. Intuition will always point you in the right direction. You as the person don't need to worry about handling with conscious control all of the interpretations, because there was this one time where I was doing a mediumship, and this girl asked me to communicate with her father who had passed on, and all I saw was this kitchen. I didn't see a person. I didn't see her, I didn't see her dad. I didn't see grandpa, grandma, anyone. I saw this kitchen, and there was a freaking, it was like one of those classic old circular wooden tables, this orange, like burnt orange linoleum floor, and like this green piece of Tupperware, like a Tupperware bowl. And I was like, so I don't know how you're going to take this. What I'm seeing, and she apparently, I described the kitchen of the last house that her dad lived in while he was alive. Like, that was his kitchen completely. The point wasn't that her dad had to come through and say, yes, it is me. I have passed on and I love you still, and all these different things. He showed me an image that seemed totally out there that I almost wanted to just be like, I don't know what to tell you. Like, I'm getting kitchen stuff. I'm getting a kitchen. But she was moved by that, and it was because, of course, it was like a validation. That's all it was. It was just validation. And that's what we want to do with our intuition. If you think it's out there, if you think it's outlandish, if your intuition's wrong, what if people judge you because then you're wrong? The irony is, you're going to be wrong all the time if you're trying to control the process. You will be wrong all the time because you're trying to take a force so much greater than you are, not in some sort of deprecating sense, but like it's a force that's beyond your conscious understanding, and you're trying to put it through a very simple filter, and it's so much more advanced than that. And it, you know, there's so many moving pieces in the universe. But I would love to hear, what's your thought on that? What's your thought on the intuition and trusting it?
I think that is a beautiful way to describe it. I've actually thought about this in depth, and I actually wanted to at one point like map out brain waves. And say, you know, here's the little spike that's the, you know, the intuition blip, and here's all the crap that you're like adding to it or like trying to process it.
That's not a bad idea. That's great.
Yeah, and so that initial first blip of intuition that you get, it's like, okay, I got it. You know, and then, you know, don't try. It's like that, you know, the two keywords, don't try. It's just, you know, you're just allowing, you know, you're not trying to add all this extra stuff. But yeah, I think that's a beautiful way describe it. And yeah, it's like a little heartbreaking, because I've encountered so many people who are so like clearly so talented with this and like able to do it, and they doubt themselves a lot, and they doubt what they get. But you know, that's why the session with you was so valuable, because I'm like, okay, you know, this isn't a real client. This is just Jax, so I can say whatever.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. And so like having someone to do that with, or having someone to like test and see and like tune in, that's great. And I think that's awesome practice. And so I like to go, when there's not a pandemic, I like to go to like spiritual meetups and psychic gatherings and things like that when I can, and just like practice that with whoever. Because yeah, I think that's spot on. It's like, you know, you're going to get what you get. It will probably make little to no sense to you. Don't try to make sense of it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. You don't have to. You don't have to take on that responsibility.
Yeah. Yeah.
The only thing that responsibility serves is potentially your ego. Potentially it will mean that you in some way managed this psychic force and are a very psychic person because you managed it and showed it. The irony is, through the humility of not knowing, you end up presenting more true information, which is something that you would expect a genuinely very wise person would do. You could be more wise by not trying to be, is the feeling that intuition sort of presents all the time. It's like it repeatedly does that lesson. Oh yeah, no, you can be brilliant as long as you're not trying to be smart. You can be wise if you're not trying to be wise. You can be funny if you're not trying to be funny. That one's applied all the time. We see that all the time. You can be kind and courteous, but when you're trying to be so that you're seen as being it, it comes through as fake, which it is. You know, it's like all of life essentially is like, if you're authentic and imperfect, you'll be way closer to perfection. So it's crazy.
Boom. Authentic.
Yeah,
I love that.
That was a good almost final note here. So I would love to, well, so as far as your research project, by the way, you and I need to have a chat about that one of these days, because I actually am looking to create a few research projects in this field, and that would be one that would totally fit in with what I'm looking for, the just simply measuring brainwaves as you're experiencing, channeling, intuition, reading tarot, doing astrology. Basically, when you step out of the informational side and you step into that sort of divine energy and you feel something different, measuring what it is, you know, that's spiking in those moments, instead of doing everything under the binary measurement system of saying, did John example remote view the chair correctly, or did he only remote view 2 of the chairs correctly? So instead of taking it off of that type of binary scale, we move into a more intuitive scale where we simply measure the experience he's having while he's going through it. Because if John is terrible at taking tests, or he gets nervous when he's in a laboratory setting, then that screws everything up. But if we can find, you know, instead of putting it in that format, we can change it a little bit, go off of the assumption that this is true, and then start measuring that. That'd be really exciting. I think that'd be fun. But yeah, so people can find you at Andrew Astral on Facebook. They can find your Facebook profile, Andrew Astral, and you've got this incredible Facebook group, Spirit Squad, that you have open now that they can come join. And I'm assuming they request permission and then you just accept them or whatever after they fill out a couple of questions or something. So yeah, is there any last things you would like to just add or a message you want to give to the collective before we go?
I guess there was one other little download that I wanted to share also. Hopefully it doesn't take
no worries.
too much time.
Yeah.
But so I call it the importance of self-parenting. So there was a night like last week where I had like a flare-up of some of my medical symptoms, and I was just like scared and I was in pain. And you know, another thing, God, like I could go into so much. I'll try to keep it short, Jax. I'm sorry, but
no, it's okay.
It's like it might sound weird, but you know, you can take those moments when you're in pain, when you're suffering, when you're down, and you can continue to be in that space, or you can, choose, you can use your mind and, take on the energy of, basically a parent. So if your inner child is in pain, and if your inner child is suffering, it might sound weird and crazy, but just last week, I said to myself, and I said to my inner child, "Daddy's here, Daddy's here," over and over again, until I started to feel better. And so that's another, that I just want to kind of leave you guys with that, tidbits. Like you guys have that, that power. Love yourself, take care of yourself, be your keeper, take care of your inner child. These things that manifest physically, it all comes from, mental, emotional to physical chain. But you have the power to heal, and it's, it's within you, and you're connected. So I think that's what I want to leave everybody with.
No, that's beautiful. You're connected that way. I agree. That's funny. I've never heard of it being done that way, but I like that. I've always had something kind of similar, where instead I don't really ever have it divided into the child or parent dynamic. For me, it's like, I've got me, and then I've got my anger, and I essentially treat my anger or any emotion as just a clone of me under different external conditions. So maybe anger is like out in the desert, there's no water, it's frustrating, there's like this constant, like, almost like primal type of anger. Me sad would be me in a rainstorm or something like that. So I discuss with them, like, what do they want? Like, what are you going through? Where did you come from? How did you get here? What can we do about it? And the thing is, if you talk to your emotions, then you won't have to deny them or suppress them. You'll be able to let them flow, and they still won't be in control of you, because emotional mastery is important. And it's really tough these days, because we're so quick to kind of jump on one or the other side of an argument, to like, oh yeah, no, you've got to like let your emotions out extremely and immediately, and then it becomes like almost like an insane kind of energy that it's hard to deal with. Or people that are like, no, you have to control all of it. You have to control that. You have to defeat that. You have to destroy that. And it's like, okay, like that's also psychotic in a different way, sort of. But yeah, it's something where I think we can absolutely take care of ourselves that way. I think we can take care of ourselves in a really healthy way, without moving into the hypochondriac energy, or moving into too much of like a self-diagnosis, like meta-diagnosis that happens upon that one, where we can have a really positive experience with that. I think that's a great place to leave it for today. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being on my show today, Andrew, and I can't wait to be on your show next time. And for everyone that's here, tomorrow I'm going to be doing a live on at 3 p.m. on Starry Ari Toltec Shaman's channel, and with the Peace Dealer as well. And then I'm going to be doing a live in the afternoon, and I'll keep you guys posted with who that's going to be with. Then on Monday, I'm doing Galactic Poetry again, where we create a poem live with Haley Lynn, the Lucid Mystic. So definitely make sure to tune in for all these shows. I'm going to be making more and more content. The more we're locked down, the more I'm going to create. So I love you guys so much. Thank you guys for being a part of this channel, for all the subscriptions that we have experienced recently. Things have been going so well in that. Thank you guys so much. And I'll talk to you all very soon.